All right. Well, let's kick things off then, since I think we're ready to go. We have about 50 people on X and a handful on YouTube as well. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming and participating in Feral File's first live stream. My name is Whitney Hart, and I am the Director of Exhibitions and Head of Growth at Feral File. And I'm so excited and deeply honored to introduce Casey REAS and John Gerrard for today's discussion of John's current solo exhibition on Feral File called Crystalline Work. Casey is the co-founder and artist in residence at Feral File. He's an artist whose works have been collected by institutions such as the Pompidou, SF MoMA, the Whitney, and Buffalo AKG. He's an educator, a professor at UCLA, and he's a coder and the co-founder of the Processing Language with Ben Fry in 2001. John Gerrard is an esteemed and pioneering artist, widely regarded as a key figure in the development of simulation within contemporary art. Deceptively looking like film or video, his works are virtual worlds made using real-time computer graphics. Gerrard's work is in the collection of venerable global institutions such as the Tate, MoMA, SF MoMA, LACMA, the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, and the M+ in Hong Kong, among many others. And notably for our audience today, his work, Western Flag from 2017, was the first tokenized artwork, or NFT, to enter LACMA's permanent collection. He is represented by Pace Gallery globally. John and Casey's friendship and artistic collaborations go back to the early 2000s when John was an artist in residence at Ars Electronica Future Lab in Linz, and Casey was at the MIT Media Lab. John was part of the autumn 2019 A to P, curated by Casey, and John subsequently had a work titled Smoke Hands Dark in Feral File's October 2022 exhibition Simulation Sketchbook Works in Progress, curated by Jesse Damiani. And very notably, that work has been accessioned into the permanent collection of the Pompidou. Today, John and Casey will discuss John's current solo exhibition on Feral File called Crystalline Work. And we will let them take it away. I'll be back at the end of the conversation to moderate a QA. So please leave your questions in either the YouTube chat or X chat for discussion at the end of the conversation. Casey and John, I leave it to you.
Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I feel like there's so much we can talk about. John, as Whitney said, we've known each other for a very long time. Like we've each been on our own paths. I've been following your work forever, it feels like, and been very enthusiastic about it the entire time. I think it's really unique. It's really essential work. I really feel that you are doing things in a way and thinking through things in a way that is completely original and groundbreaking for this larger field of art, contemporary art, software work, simulation, etc. I would really like to just dive in into what we're looking at right now on the screen. Like, what are we looking at? What are we seeing?
Am I talking? Can you hear me now? Everybody can hear me now, yeah? Okay. So this is Crystalline Work. Fundamentally, it is a performance. I think that's where we begin. It is a data performance. This is really a data work in that it is constructed as a virtual world. It is really a game engine based work, with the exception that here the game engine is rendered in the browser using a technology called WebGL, which I think is a very big deal. I think WebGL is a huge deal. Web graphics language. A lot of people on this call will be familiar with it. A lot of people elsewhere would not be. So within this data work, and let's make a big distinction between data and media here. You know, this has nothing to do with cinema, nothing to do with film, nothing to do with video. It's like information. Within this data work, you have a prismatic robot. And by prismatic, what I mean by that is that the color of the robot is constantly shifting from the solstice, the summer solstice, through to the winter solstice, and back around to the summer solstice. So it moves across the color of light, the prism across that time. So while you're watching this robot, that color is changing as we watch it, but just very, very slowly. And that's the first thing. So the second thing is that the robot itself has been equipped in a way with a ice generation algorithm. So that algorithm, funnily enough, dates all the way back to 2005 when I found a snowflake generator, a JavaScript snowflake generator on the web in like 20 years ago. And I no longer have it or have access to it, but it really, I was very taken with it, this kind of branching logic of producing the snowflake. And we have remade the piece and we've kind of like revived the idea of the ice generator, the algorithm. But we pushed it, and out of that push, these what we call archetypes emerged, such as masks, trees, all these different signs. You can see them, honeycombs behind me, mazes behind you, Casey, etc. So fundamentally, this data robot, this cosmic kind of prismatic robot, is producing archetypes on the Arctic, on a platform in the Arctic. 24 a day. Those drop into a gallery on FearlFile and are made available to collect. That would be the very basic summary of the piece.
Can you talk a little bit about how this changes over time? So like this is an artwork that is going to run for an entire year. Why are we starting today? What does that mean? What's the significance there? And how will the crystalline forms sort of evolve over this entire year of the robot working, doing this labor?
Okay, so this is year zero of the work, in a way. This is mint zero of the work. It is the preview. It began on the 8th of June, and it runs for 12 days. And each day you get 24 works, and those works are positioned in year zero, one per month. So basically, we don't pivot our year around the Christian calendar in this piece, we being me, the artist. I'm going to speak about myself in the plural for some reason. My work begins on the solstice, like the pivot of the year is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. And then the next pivot is the winter, which is the shortest. And that's a long history and tradition in Ireland and elsewhere, the solar calendar, let's just call it, which is a different calendar from the Gregorian calendar as we use right now. So the pre-performance of the work, the preview of the work, ran from the 8th until the 20th, and it makes 12 artist proofs, which are distributed amongst the artists, the platform using the AP system from FearlFile, and also from the producers who've contributed so much to the work, and also the charity we're involved in called Home Tree. Now, that work, the precision of the algorithm allows the work to finish on the summer solstice, and without breaking its flow, enter year one of the work, which is the piece that FearlFile is presenting, which is year one of Arctic, crystalline work Arctic. And year one begins with, let's say, June, and June uses single rays. Like the whole logic of the snowflake begins with the ray, 1 ray, 2 ray, 3 ray, 4 ray as such, which are kind of like just a bar. And then it branches, and depending on how that thing branches, you get the shape of the snowflake. I mean, snowflakes are kind of 6 ray, 8 ray, 12 ray. You get different types of snowflakes. So in our case, we take the branching logic of the snowflake, we attach it to a single ray, and you get trees. So in the solstice, you get trees, or mycelium, which is an upside down tree. When you go to the next month, which is July, you get 2 rays, and they change, they become double trees. 3 rays, you start getting things like honeycombs, these amazing angels, which Whitney had. Anyway, So through the year, it goes one ray to 12 ray. There's 12 rays in the piece, which dictates the aesthetics of the piece. And so, you know, this is a solar work. So as the piece works, the sun, you know, remains in place for the 24-hour solar period in the Arctic. And then you get to the solstice and it's permanently dark. That's recorded in the piece. And then back up to the summer again through this ray system. One last point on the solstice. The solstice is the only day that the robot leaves the visible prism and becomes a mirrored robot. So on that first day in June, on the solstice, the robot is mirrored. And on the winter solstice, the robot's mirrored. So that's when the work leaves the visible light. So Casey, ask me about the sound a bit later. I need to talk about sound a little bit later. And also ask me about the pincer, which is quite important too, but we'll do that later.
For sure, for sure. I just wanted to be very clear, or try to be more clear about the operation and the work and the labor the robot is doing. So like on the solstice, 2 days from now, year one begins, and it begins creating a new form every hour. And then when that form is complete, it then becomes a tokenized work that can be collected. Is that right?
Yes, it's correct in all but one aspect. The rule of this piece is that it makes 24 works every 24 hours. Yes. But the works that use less crystals take less time. We have works which are just one crystal. Sometimes it's weird, you just get one crystal. And they're very beautiful, very minimal. In a funny way, almost like land art or something. Other works have 280 crystals and they take 3 hours to make, you know. So the hard and fast rule is that you get 24 works in any 24-hour period, but they can be of any length. And as you say, when the work is finished, it drops into a gallery and is available to be collected. But just to be clear, at this period, we are selling the work. Whatever is available next is available to collect. You know, that is before the robot begins to perform, because none of the APs are for sale. You purchase the work, whatever's next, and that dynamic will probably, you know, continue for a while until works become available that have not been pre-purchased.
Yes. So like right now, I don't remember the date that we're up to. Maybe it's like June 25th or something like that. All the work through that day has sort of been already accounted for through collectors. And then those days will keep growing out. And when you collect the work, it doesn't appear immediately, but it only appears, you know, you have a placeholder in your collection, and then you receive the work after the robot does the work, and then it sort of transfers over.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, the work is generative in that it must produce the work. I mean, the work doesn't exist. The robot receives a pattern or instruction as such from the algorithm and then performs the work. You know, intersecting with my relationship with, you know, art blocks and those kind of systems in a way where, you know, you have the seed, you know, which produces generative, long-form generative, you know, like long-form generative artwork, such as, you know, Tyler Hopp's Fidenza, or, you know, these very celebrated works, and your works, Casey. You know, I was always a little bit of an outlier in art blocks. I kind of sneaked in and did like slightly weird things like Petrinational and World Flag, which were a little bit generative, but like, I think they just made room for me because they liked us. But yeah, I mean, this piece, funnily enough, is probably a lot more generative in a very fundamental sense than Petrinational was, in a funny way.
It's a year-long performance, a year of work, and 24 each day. And at each moment, nobody knows what form is going to be produced each time the robot begins a new one, correct?
Yeah. And some of them are, you know, pretty wonderful, actually. You know, you can check them by going through the APs, you know, that some of them are, I mean, I think some of them are, you know, some of them are, I find very, very appealing. I mean, they're all kind of great for me, but some of them are, I think, are particularly spectacular.
Well, I think it's definitely a piece of long form work with a huge range in what can be produced. I think, like you said, you could have a single crystal, you can have many crystals, and I think all the different lighting conditions that happen as the sun changes in relationship to the Arctic every year. It's just such a wide spectrum, I guess, to use upon on purpose of
when we also we sort of guided it, obviously, like we were very interested in these generative forms like mycelium forms and tree forms in the summer, and honeycomb, and these languages of warmth and in a funny way of life, and then into the winter it becomes much icier, it becomes much more like snowflakes and things like that. Whoops, we've lost our beautiful something's happened. Anyway, it's fine.
I think Whitney's changed up to a different time of year, maybe.
Okay, she's changed the work. Okay, fine. Sorry, Casey, keep talking.
Oh, it's good. It's good. I kind of lost my train of thought there as well. Yeah, so I think one thing that you talked about a little bit yesterday is that the work. Oh yeah, so if people want to see a preview of what happens over the entire year, just to say it again, it's there in the works that have been created over the last week, and then we're going to start for that full year, and so it's 8,760 works over the course of the year. So it's a really ambitious project. It's incredible. I think the quality, I just want to talk about the craft for a moment. I think the idea is one thing. The level of simulation here, the level of light simulation and refraction, is just incredible. Can you say a little bit about that and how that adds to your conception of the work?
Yeah. So I have to give some credit, some very, very strong credits. So I would say, fundamentally, I entered this world of building simulations as contemporary artworks in 2005, shortly after we met in FutureLab. I was showing experiments along these lines in FutureLab, sort of early game engine based works in the FutureLab in Ars Electronica and Linz. But my first kind of breakthrough was Thousand Year Dawn in 2005. And that's like 20 years ago, So I've been working with this incredible producer, Werner Protzelberger, for those 20 years. And, we have honed our craft, you could say. He's a brilliant producer. And for 15 of those years, we have been working with an extraordinary programmer, Helmut Bressler, and also great arrays, depending on the project, of modelers, animators, texture artists. Like we work within, I would call it a cinema model, where we expand the production to accommodate different kinds of projects. And if you look at my website, which is johngerrard.net, you'll kind of get a sense of the scale of some of those projects, like for the Public Art Fund, for whoever it might be. But with this particular work, we started this work as an XE in 2018, into 2019, and it was this is very key for me. It was a work that was located in place. It was a machine, it was a graphics card, it was an XE, it was a local work. Let's call it a geographic work. And we did a lot of work on the robot and a lot of work on the platform and the crystals at that time. And then it sort of stayed where it was, and it was only really in early 2023 that we had a gap in the studio between projects. And I said to Werner, the producer, let's pull this out, let's bring it into WebGL, and let's really push this piece. And as I said, incredible production collaboration, and this is the result. Now, the other thing is, I keep talking about this distinction between, like if you open this piece on a big screen and you click on the top left-hand corner, because we have this interaction device, top left-hand corner means full screen, bottom left-hand corner means generative sound on or off, top right-hand corner means rotate, and bottom right-hand corner means robot on or off in the NFTs, in the works. If you click on the top left-hand corner on a big monitor, there's something about data, about information. It's just like, it just has this quality. It just, I don't know. You could kind of like, I can't put my finger on it. I'm just fascinated by it. It just gets better and better. You know,
I wanted to add on to that a little bit. Like last night, I spent a few hours with the work on a 4K screen, as large as it could go, put the sound on a good pair of speakers, and really just sort of experienced it. And it was really unlike another aesthetic experience that I'd had before. Sort of the method and the movement of the robot, the materials and the textures, like at that resolution, it works so well. And I think this works well on a phone and on a smaller screen, but with like all of that visual information and that sonic information coming through, it's really a strong experience.
Well, the Sonic is brand new. I did a beautiful, I mean, can I tell you a sad story? Like a heartbreaking story, kind of. I'm a huge Richie Houghton fan, like the techno artist, Richie Houghton, Plastic Man. And we worked on a really, really beautiful piece called iridescent.stream. If you just type in your browser iridescent.stream, you will find it as a video record. And we worked with this amazing entity called Bronze, and I made an iridescent Python, and Richie trained an AI with techno, and incredible piece. But it's an XE. It's an executable file, you know? So, you know, I got it up on iridescent.stream as a video record, but like if you want to install it, you have to install it, you know? And so it's just not really present in the world in the way that this is present as a piece of public art in the browser for a global audience. You don't have to get, you know, I just feel like for me, this space, the phone, the screen is the key interface. I mean, it's the key interface for public art, I am sure. And WebGL is the key medium, I think, in a funny way for now, in a funny, weird way for me personally. It's just a very interesting time to be working, you know, as an artist. But let me just touch on something for you. Like I've made a sound-based piece with Richie Houghton, which is edition of 4, and it's kind of isolated. It has to be installed. It has to be visited. You can't experience it in the browser. So, you know, this time I worked with a young composer here in Austria, Jonas Haderer, and I'm just going to read quickly what he said about the piece. So it's like a generative sound synthesis model replicates the creation of sound through vibration using physical modeling techniques. It's achieved by producing a series of sequential impulses, much like the excitations generated by friction. These impulses are then channeled through a set of formant filters that mimic a resonant body. The outcome is a material choir, I love the word choir, that sings together in a unified voice, creating a harmonious and at times inharmonious canon. One last little thing about the sound. On the summer solstice, the sound transcends into the range above 20 kilohertz, which is a frequency beyond human hearing. And you know, it's also the day that you can't see the color either. You can't hear the piece or you can't see the color on the solstice. So the 20 hertz above is only perceived by certain animals like wolves. So it's like an unhuman time, basically. And then across the year, it slows back down. And then in the winter solstice, it's back to 20. So, you know, if you click the bottom left-hand corner on the work, you will get this sound. And it's a really key moment for me because I feel WebGL is a cultural vessel. If we start working with data-generated sound in this way, it's kind of like a new album format. I call it like an infinite play, an IP, not an LP, an IP. It just flows, you know? Actually, this whole thing is just flow. Like the whole work is flow.
Yeah, and I think we can watch the works build over the course of the year. And then I also just wanted to clarify that if you do collect a work, the default view is the finished pattern, but then you can then have it clear, and then the robot continues to build and rebuild that same pattern continuously, that you're collecting a piece of software with a customized data set that it continues to enact.
Yeah, and if you, top right-hand corner, you can rotate the work. Bottom left, you can switch the sound on. And again, top left, you can go full screen. So like we wanted a very simple interface system on this square where you could interact on your phone, on your touchpad, or on your screen, you know, like on your very easily. Yeah.
I wanted to talk just a little bit more in depth, something you touched on a moment ago, this evolution of this art form. And you talk about, do you call them XEs?
Yeah, like software, like executable file.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there was this moment when artists were working with code, writing software, doing simulation work, where you'd need to have like a large gaming PC with sort of a graphics processing unit, and you were very, you know, active showing this work in public with these large LED walls at this scale, and now through the work, World Flag, Petronational, you've shifted towards a different kind of public art. I think, just to say one more thing, in the 1990s, when the web became something that was global, that was this moment where artists could publish work immediately at a global scale. That was a huge transformation. And I believe now we're going through a similar transformation for work of this nature. It no longer needs to be geolocated and installed in a place, but it can be everywhere at all times. Can you talk a little bit about your transformation?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. So I've been working absolutely, you know, full-time professionally as an artist since let's say 2005, when I sold my first work in Miami, 1,000 years ago. And I think it's quite important to place works in the world. You know, I think that's important, you know, like to get that exchange of energy where people take the work and they give you power, you know, give you energy. You know, I'm not going to talk about it as money. I'm going to talk about it as like a system or language, you know.
You know, it creates the opportunity for you to dedicate your time to making work and for those ideas to continue. Yeah.
Well, which is why the tokenization of digital art is so key. Like I could not work in the browser like this without tokenization. No way. You know, I brokered space for myself to make simulations, which were sold in fairs and galleries in, you know, places like Basel. You know, I was showing smoke trees in Basel in 2006. I brokered room for myself by like kind of putting software in boxes in a funny way. You know, you could bring this home and live with it. And like people did that. They bought smoke trees or dust storms or, you know, and they brought them home. They were like, John, I woke up at 3 a.m. and the sun was rising, and I, you know, just like couldn't, you know, they just couldn't believe what was happening, you know, because it's kind of very painterly medium. Simulation is a weirdly it's a mashup of everything. It's really hard to work with in simulation, but if you do break into it, it's a very rich space. But yeah, so, you know, I started off like showing the work in the world, gaining some power, and then, you know, with the support of galleries, with the support of patrons, you know, we started putting these big works out there. Like Public Art Fund put Solar Reserve at the Lincoln Center in 1415. That went to MoMA. You know, Western Flag 17 was in Somerset House. It was like a beautiful installation. And, you know, and I also, Casey, you touched on ecology. Like I've been bringing works to UN climate change conferences for some time as well. I brought Flare, big piece of a flame flag in Tonga, influenced or inspired by an amazing guy called Uli Lucy to Glasgow, to the climate change conference. And I have to say, given the scale of the challenge now with the hot earth, you know, with the heat crisis we have now, I've kind of got to the point where I think geography and place is really limiting for art, which is why we are doing exactly what we're looking at right now. This is why we're doing this. Like most people can't get to Glasgow. They can't get to London, to the Hayward, to see my surrender flag at the Hayward. Many people can't even see this because it's probably too resource hungry, but a lot of people can. And so before I come back to your next question, I want to ask a question, and I'll ask a question of everybody on this audience. As an artist, my greatest ambition is to move the public. Really, my great ambition. That's what I would love to do. And move is a really rich word, you know, because it is an emotional word, to move somebody, to actually spiritually or emotionally move them. But it also means to physically move them. You know, it's kind of got this double rich meaning. And I wonder if you come to FearlFile and you click top left-hand corner and go full screen and you sit with a good speaker in your home and you spend time at this work, might you be moved by this work in that setting? And I think probably yes. And might that achieve something? Maybe yes. So this is where I want to work right now. I wouldn't say I'm done with biennales, because I'm not. And I'm definitely not done with galleries, because they're so valuable and so wonderful. Like Pace is brilliant and wonderful. But I'm really interested in this public, this global audience that might accompany me into this space.
Awesome. I'd love to transition into talking about the material impact this work is having on the world. I know a big part of Web3 has been artists being generous, artists contributing to charities. You've been working with Hometree now for a substantial amount of time, and I think this project represents a new and incredible commitment to them. Can you talk a little bit about Hometree and what they're doing and the real impact they're having in Ireland?
Yeah, and I want to talk about this in a really precise way because it's really important right now. So Matt Smith, who founded Hometree, is what I would describe, first of all, as a really beautiful person in the sense of, like, you know, spiritually, really, really beautiful. And he's like this luminous person who said to me, John, this is all I can do right now. He said, like, all I can do right now is get trees in the ground. Like, this is what I have to do. And if you go to hometree.ie, like, he is mobilizing in Ireland to restore a lost temperate rainforest. I mean, there was a temperate rainforest in Connemara in Ireland, and it was lost in the last 500 years. Like, we had rainforests in Ireland. There's fragments left. It's like the American prairies. Like, they cling on the edge of hills and they hide on the corners of fields. And so, you know, Matt is sending out people to find remnants of rainforest and to bring the seeds back. He's planting them and nurturing them, and then he is restoring this 4,000-acre rainforest. And the first step is he needs money to fence it, because you have to keep the animals out, you know, like animals which will simply just sheep and, you know, introduced goats and stuff, like they'll just mow everything down. So and trees, you know, there's an interesting story where, you know, the first wave of settlement, in a sense, like European settlers in America, cleared the whole east coast of America of woods and turned it into farmland. They did many other things, but it's for another call. And many of those farms failed. You know, let's say between 1850 and 1950, huge numbers of the East Coast American farms failed. And you had a wholesale re-wooding of the East Coast of America in that period. And scientists have found a temperature hole which literally coordinates with the reforesting of a whole section of the East Coast of America. So trees are incredibly powerful climate coolers. And there are approaches to climate change that involve a lot of technology, like robotics, like literally, like robots on the poles, which I'm fascinated by. But, you know, we also have this thing where you simply plant trees and we can start to address climate heating. And, you know, we mobilize and we do it now. So very, very simply and very practically, we give 25% of all, 100% of proceeds for this project, 25% goes to Hometree, the charity in Ireland. They have their own wallet. It goes directly to them. They will plant trees with that money. So that's what's going to happen.
Awesome. I feel like we've been talking a while. I've reached the end of my essential questions. I was wondering, John, if you have anything else you'd like to say about the work?
I do. So I want to talk about the pincer, because the pincer is kind of important to me. And the pincer is like a secret, which I haven't really talked about too much. Whitney and I talked about it for the right-click save article. But can you see there's like marks on the pincers? Can you see there's like marks there on the pincer when it comes up? Yeah. So I call that soiled, which is a word that I'm really, really interested in. It's a 3-part word, soiled, in a sort of Joycean, like James Joycean tradition. So within the word soiled is the word soil, which is obviously earth. Also the word soiled, which means to be dirty in some way, to soil yourself. And finally, the word oil is embedded in there too, because it's S''OILED. So when we were making this work and this incredible mirrored aesthetic was emerging, I asked Werner, the producer, if we could model raised globules of petroleum, which we did. And then we assigned those globules the shape of the continents, the world's continents, basically. So, you know, Asia and America and, you know, like the continents, Europe, And those globules of rich brown, glossy petroleum are traveling around the pincer all the time. So if you look closely, you will see that between the sort of cosmic prismatic robot and the earthly ice crystals is this soiled pincer. Now, there's only 2 days of the year where there's no soiling, which is the winter solstice and the summer solstice. And by tradition, those are the days we dance. I mean, we gather and we dance those days, basically. And so that's another reason why the piece drops into complete silence on those days, because on those days, we get to make the music in a funny way. You know, Richie will come, we'll play, he'll play, and, you know, we'll try and get together and achieve something together because, you know, I think we do have to mobilize now. This piece, I would say, in a funny way, is quite a political piece.
Yes. Yes. Whitney, I'm wondering if you or maybe could moderate questions coming in from Lauren, or you have any questions coming in, anything for John?
Of course. I think one of the questions I'd like to ask John is about the sound behind the piece. I can attempt to unmute and play the sound for our audiences across both YouTube and X, but a lot of care has been taken to create this very rich generative audio track that evolves throughout the 365 days of the solar year. John, can you tell us a little bit about how this audio track came about, how it changes over the course of the year, and sort of your hope for how the audience will engage with it in their daily lives?
Yeah. So if I'm going to talk about the sound, I have to talk about my mother, who was the most incredible person, Mida, who gave birth to 7 children and raised us all in the Irish countryside, and then returned to university and retrained as a spatial planner in her 60s. She was very interested in how people use landscapes. But her first training was in music. She was a classically trained harpist. And so I grew up, you know, in a kitchen where like my mother would be playing like classical music, like so loud, you know, cooking for like 7 children. And before she died 10 years ago, and we miss her a lot, she sort of gifted me some things. And one of the things she gifted me was the work of the medieval chorister, Thomas Tallis, who is a composer of choral music, ancient choral music. And through very, very difficult times that I've had in the last 5 years, just in terms of my own mental health, and also actually just kind of coping with the wildness of the world, just the kind of the difficulty of the world now. I've taken a lot of comfort from ancient choral work, people gathering and singing together towards a type of a comfort. So, I did a lot of research. I looked into the idea of the contemporary chorus. I looked into things called solfeggio, harmonics, and, the sound bath, the Tibetan, the sort of like the kind of harmonics, which might give people comfort in these difficult, painful times. And so, we'll probably continue to refine this because we can do that a little bit, but bottom left-hand corner, across the year, you have per ray, you have a vibration, I call it. And it is made up of data, but data is a kind of a modeled string, in a sense, which oscillates over time and is a sort of a chorus. So as people consider collecting this work, I have a vision which I want to share, which is that you might collect like works from each month of the year, let's say June, July, August, September, October, 1 through 12, each ray. You can get a day or an hour or whatever you feel like. And if you were to put 12 together, it would form a chorus, a prismatic chorus, because the robots would be all the colors, number one. But also it would sing, it would be 12 voices, 12 digital voices from the work. And if I ever was to install this work in a museum setting and invite people to spend time with it, that's how I would do it. I would install 12 square screens of a certain scale, and put a bench and allow people to, consider this idea of work, value, ice, heat, these archetypal languages of branching, trees, ice, all the things we share.
Shall I attempt to unmute and see if we can play the audio for the community?
Do it.
All right.
Do you know what? Could we, Whitney, before you do it, is it going to ruin everything if you try and pull up a different, like an NFT? Is this a generator? Can we do, is that going to ruin the world?
I don't think so.
Because if you pull up like the silver, if you go to like, go to the gallery. Yeah, go to the gallery. Let me just think which one we want. It hasn't performed the solstice yet. Go down. So guys, this is the gallery. This is all the APs that have been performed, okay? So at the bottom, we have, this one is like the first, which was, that's probably a 2-ray. Just click on it. Can I just see it for a second? Click on it and we'll see. That's like a 2-ray, which is like June, July. Yeah, so this is a 2-ray. So drop back down and come all the way, drop to the gallery for 1 second. If you come back down and basically like one of the more recent ones at the top, which have just come up, basically. Yeah, something like, like that one. Let's do this one, okay? So this is still year 0. Oh, that's an amazing one. Wow. Okay. So top left-hand corner to go full top left. Yeah. And top right to make sure it's rotating. It should be rotating. Yeah. So let's get the sound going first. I think musicians kind of need this form, because I'm using it in a very particular kind of way. I'm making a rich world here, a rich world. So, oops, Casey, sorry, Whitney, maybe just look around a little bit in the scene, just drag it around a little bit. So, that's my world, and then click the bottom right and the robot will come in and start again. But if you know how to build a virtual world, you can build any world here. anything. You know, you can build any kind of a world, actually. And if you know how to make generative sound on the bottom left-hand corner, you can put in any kind of a track. So in the era of streaming, which is an incredible way to allow people to know your work, we do not have an accompanying album form, which allows artists to make like a really good living, you know, like music artists. So I have a feeling that tokenized WebGL worlds offer not just visual artists like us, but sound artists like really an interesting place to be, you know? So I'm sort of excited to show this work, and I'm talking to, obviously, to people like Richie about it and Kim Assendorf about it, and, you know, to try and get some of these things started. So now, just to say, we have a yellow robot. We're back at the yellow period of the year. Jump out for a second. I want to get a slightly different colored robot for everybody. I want to get like a red robot. Whitney, so just top left, yeah, and go down. And let's just down and like go like all the way to the left at the bottom left-hand corner, maybe. Yeah. And let's see what this is, and bottom right, and we'll get the robot in, and we'll go full screen.
This one is violet.
That's a double tree. It's a 2-ray double tree, which I just love. And I love these double trees. They're my favorites, actually. And if you hit the bottom right-hand corner, we'll just see what kind of a robot comes in. Anyway, you guys get the picture. So if you acquire one, it is a work. If you hit I, you can export a 4K JPEG and print it locally using the keystroke G, which is a guide to printing, which is embedded in the work. So for $100, you get the work, which is a digital work, but you also get a 4K image, which you can print locally, which I think is quite reasonable. If you hit M, you can export the model, the 3D model. That's a beautiful chroma, pure chroma pink robot from the Prism, which I love. If you hit M, you can export the crystal as a 3D model of itself, which you can 3D print as a piece of jewelry. You can bring it into a virtual world. You know, it's kind of a rich terrain. But the main thing I really want people to consider is, like, if you have some resources and you get 24 tokens, you can string them into one day, and then the robot will perform 24 patterns in a day, when you can, you know, use the FearlFile app to broadcast to a device in your home. And I just love the idea of people living with this work in that way. So yeah, it's pretty flexible.
And I love when we look at the gallery here of the APs, you can start to see, this is a beauty, you can see how the light changes throughout the year. So here we have June, where it's very bright, reflecting at the Arctic North Pole during the solar day, where we are experiencing light for 24 hours. And then we go into the autumn and into the depths of winter, where it is traditionally dark for 24 hours a day. And there is quite simply a spotlight that is lighting up and illuminating the work of the robot. And now in the AP process, we're back towards the spring again, and re-entering this period of light, where here we are in April. So we have 2 more days left of the robot performing these APs, and we will transition into the performance, the collectible performance, on Thursday evening at the summer solstice.
Whitney, could you pull up a winter, like a snowflake from the winter, because it's so beautiful, like the middle of the winter? Yeah, like one of these. Just show it to people. Yeah, and so as Whitney says, the piece will be performed until next summer solstice, and then the performance, that's a really great one. The performance is ostensibly complete next year, and the ambition is to get 12,000 accompanying trees into the ground over that period through the support of the community, the blockchain community, who collect these kinds of works. So I think, yeah, I mean, spread the word, tell people about the piece, and we kind of need your support on this. It's quite a difficult project for these times, 8,760 works. So roll up. Don't be stuck. Don't.
John, there has been a question.
Yes.
There is a comment from Runjuko, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, that says, this is a beautiful and moving work. I was wondering if John ever had thoughts of the visual comparisons to Neolithic sites like Stonehenge.
Oh, yes. Well, I would say less Stonehenge and more Newgrange. Google Newgrange. So in Ireland, like the mantle of Christianity is laid over much, much older belief systems, very thin. It's very, very, very thin. And you have an incredible site called Newgrange, which is a winter solstice site. It is a passage grave, a kind of a raised passage grave where the sunlight travels through a tiny little window in this enormous structure only on the winter solstice and illuminates the back wall. And what's incredible about the Newgrange site is that the bones that they found in the site were not Irish, whatever Irish may mean. They were Anatolian, and they're like 5,000 years old. They're Anatolian bones in like Ireland 5,000 years ago. But so the Irish, let's say, indigenous peoples of the island of Ireland, and with all these very interesting belief routes across Europe, which are very, very documented, sort of Neolithic, pre-Neolithic belief routes. They were a solar people, like they were solar entities, and so my whole childhood was spent traipsing around, watching, visiting solar sites in Ireland, and I think in the Americas you also have. I mean, Casey, if you jump to one of the sun, actually, jump to one of the equinoxes, the middle ground equinoxes. Like we looked very closely at Atacama. Like see the orange, like the reddish one, like maybe a third up, like the reddish one down, and to the right. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, one of those. For these ones, we looked really closely at Atacama, and at these sort of American sites. Well, actually, not quite that one, but that's a good one anyway. That's called a field. Yeah, so there's all these languages embedded, and we build these languages. They don't actually just happen on their own. We also build them. It is an artwork as well, So, and I'm also, interested in light and space, and these kind of more contemporary Californian histories, particularly, so which are embedded in this piece to a degree as well.
Perfect. There has been another question. The robotic hand goes off frame to pick up the pieces of crystal. What is this out of frame crystal stash? How would you describe it?
It's a good question. It is, they actually are there. That's the funny thing. Like I have to get the incredible programmer Helmut on this call someday, because we just have all these crystals all around, which it picks up and then ferries back into to place. Sort of like shelves of them in a funny way. So really, it's an industrial robot. It turns around, picks up a crystal, puts it down, and we set the scene up every time a piece works. Every time a piece, the camera drifts to the side, a new world is summoned, and the robot reaches around for crystals and produces that world. That's how it functions. But all the crystals that the piece needs, I think this is a mask, is it? Is it a mask? Yeah, you can look at the metatypes. All the crystals that are needed for this piece are stacked to the side, and the robot must pick them up and then zip around and drop them in. And in a funny way, it is physically accurate, this piece. We followed real rules to make it work. It's not like a fantastical work in a funny way. Kind of is, but it isn't at the same time. It's sort of rooted in a bizarre data reality.
Amazing. Are there any other questions before we wrap up for the day? Please ask away. We can peruse some more of the APs while people type up their questions.
Is because the way we posted this Twitter live, I've seen the number of people double up to, we have nearly 700 people on the call now. So I would say, Casey, like, is there anything you want to revisit for the 350 people who came in late? Like, is there anything you want to go back to and just touch on as we have them here? And then earlier people can leave.
I think just the essentials, that this is a year-long performance. This is going to be going on for a year. There's going to be 24 new works emerge each day. Do you want to do the honors again, John, with that?
Yeah. So just to conclude for our new guests, and thank you all for turning up. It's beautiful that you're here. So crystalline work is a new WebGL work, web graphic language work, which is a world rendered in the browser. It is just, if you click bottom right and have the robot come in, Whitney, I'll just talk about that. It involves a prismatic data robot sited on the Arctic that has been equipped with a ice generation algorithm, which is sort of a modulated ice generation algorithm. The robot produces 24 works a day based on ice formation, but adjusted so that they take different forms, which look like trees and masks and these such things. Upon completion, those works drop into a gallery and became available as tokenized artworks. And we dedicate 25% of each sale to fund the planting of trees in a lost temperate rainforest in Ireland. As Casey pointed out, the work is actually performed live on Feral File for a year from summer solstice 2024 through to summer solstice 2025, when we're all going to have a big party. Isn't that right, Whitney? When the piece finishes. And so I have to just say that Feral File have stepped up and done an incredible back-end engineering feat to present this work. So kudos to Sean and to Casey and to Whitney and to Anne and everybody, you know, who's engineered this and worked on this, and everybody, Courtney, Lauren, everybody. So yeah, over the year it makes 8,760 works, and that is what it is.
Wonderful. And then in addition to that, the way that the works modulate throughout the year, the way that the movement of the sun in relationship to the site changes, and that different forms emerge in different seasons so
it's an annual solar work. At the heart of snowflake generation is what I call rays. So you have, in my work, you have 1 ray through to 12 ray. So for us in June, it's a 1 ray work. In July, it's 2 ray. In August, it's 3, all the way through to 12 ray. Is that correct? No, sorry, it's wrong. We go down 1, 3, 5, 7. We do the odds down to the solstice, and then the evens up to the 2. So we don't do, we jump 1, 3, 5, 7, and then back up to 12. So, and the rays give very, very different forms. In midwinter, you get a lot of 12 ray objects, which look very much like snowflakes. In June, you get trees, and your key to understand this piece is to look at the artist proofs. The artist proofs in the Feral File gallery, the 0 works, which is year 0 in this work, allow you to understand the whole piece. From June 20th, which is summer solstice, it moves into year 1 of this piece, and the works become available to sell. Actually, they're on pre-sale right now. So Casey, Whitney, jump to the sales mechanism for 1 second. Let's just do this, because I think we have many people on the call. Let's make it clear. So can you see here, it says collect. So quantity, if you put in 1, you get 1 work. You can put in, let's say 24, and you will get 24 works, which is 1 solar day. Hit collect. You can choose whatever wallet that you wish, and you can purchase them. There is a discounting mechanism which is actually should be in place, but it will be in place very shortly. We had a little engineering hiccup today, which will be resolved shortly. You do not get the work immediately in your wallet because it must be performed by the robot. The robot does not begin performing until the 20th of June. It performs for the year. If you happen to get a work which will be performed in 3 weeks, it'll be in your wallet in 3 weeks, and we have a placeholder until then. So again, we invite you all to support the project. We've had an incredible response on social media today, which we are very thankful for. I don't know if Whitney or Lauren or Sean or Casey wants to say anything to conclude, but I'm going to say thank you.
Yeah,
Casey, did you want to?
Just briefly, that everything that's been created from when it started until the solstice 2 days from now is sort of a compressed year, and then at that point things will stretch out for the whole year. And that when the robot begins creating a new work, nobody, including John, really knows exactly the work that is going to be produced, but they do fall into these different forms of archetypes over the year. Like John, we've been working on this for months. Whole team's been working on it. Your team's been working on it. Our team's been working on it. I've been following your work for over 20 years with great interest, and I feel like this work is like opening up a whole new range of ideas and a set of ways of thinking about ecology, regeneration, performance, all of these themes you've been working on a long time. I'm so excited to have this work in the world and excited to be a small part of that. Thank you.
Big part of it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. With that, we will wrap up for the day. Thank you all so much for coming and being here with us today. You can go to ferrophile.com and explore both the live robot as it is creating the pieces. It is still creating the year 0 APs. And you can also go to the right-hand side and look at the gallery of all of the works that the robot has produced in the last 10 days so far. You can purchase one that is $100. You can purchase either using a credit card or using Ethereum as you wish. And the artist does encourage you to purchase in multiples. If you wind up purchasing 24 altogether, you will hear the audio soundtrack of all 24 playing back to back. There was a question about this process of stringing. If you download the Ferrophile app, we are developing and will soon launch a process for you to watch the robot perform back to back and listen to an uninterrupted audio track of the robot's performance for all of the crystalline work pieces that you have collected. So we will put it out through social media and also send out an email when that function is developed within the app in the coming weeks, so that you can string together all of your performances. You can stream them to your computer or television screen of your liking, and then you can listen to the audio, as I said, back to back. You can do this whether you buy them in multiples within a day format or multiple days. You can also do this if you purchase throughout the entire year. So you get a full representative sample of the robot's work from June all the way through to the following June, from solstice to solstice and back again. So more to come on that front. There will be so much to this project that continues to roll out over the course of the next 365 days. And on behalf of Ferrophile, we are thrilled to be working on this with John and with his amazing team. His producers have been incredible. Werner and Helmut, thank you both so much for your tireless work over the last few weeks. It has been a few months that you've worked with us, but I know it's been years that you've worked with John on this piece, so thank you very much. And to Jonas, who has recently joined the team to bring in the audio element, thank you very much for your really important contribution to the project. With that, we will wrap things up today. As always, if you do have any questions, please shoot us an email, support@ferrophile.com. You can DM us through the various platforms. And with that, I will let you all go for the afternoon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Whitney. Bye.